Chapter 85. It won't be long now, said Lee Cherie to a spoon. Moorish architects were wont to make their windows look like keyholes, and the red-headed princess stood at such a window as if she were a bloodshot eye, keyhole peeping at the pyramid while it was being dressed. It was Sunday, a day as milky and muffled in the Moslem world, oddly enough, as it was in Christendom. The day shift, made up of mostly Greek and Yugoslavian masons, the sunwise Arabs chose to work nights, was on the job, affixing limestone facing, but Lee Cherie had given herself a day off. It won't be long now, said Lee Cherie. If there was a trace of anxiety in her voice, the spoon couldn't tell. Aben had loved her well the previous evening, and she'd slept quite late. She lingered over her breakfast tea, then devoted some time to playing with the teaspoon. It was as noon could be when she stood at her window, staring across the shadowless city, low and blanched and jumbled as a boneyard, as a retirement picnic for used-up schoolroom chalk. In the noonday sun, the pyramid, too, gleamed white. Despite the intense heat, the city seemed cold. It was eternally alien to her American temperament. But the pyramid was real to Lee Cherie in a way that buildings of her own society were not. How can one thing be more real than any other? Especially when it is inscrutable and mysterious. Maybe when a thing is perceived as being absolutely direct, yet absolutely unnecessary, it becomes absolutely genuine. It is real unto itself and does not depend on outside attachments or associations for its reality. The more emotional value is attributed to a thing, the more uses to which it can be put, the more effects it produces, then the more illusions it creates. Illusions, like many values themselves, are cloying and false, but straight lines and flat surfaces exude perpetual reality, especially when no utilitarian function can be perceived. The geometric figure of a pyramid permits the eye to flow around its corners. We don't have to walk around it to know it completely, to see its front and to see its back. In fact, its front is its back. A pyramid is primary. It is form, not function. It is presence, not effect. We can see it in an instant, yet we continue to read it. It nourishes us over and over. A pyramid is inscrutable and mysterious, not in spite of being elemental, but because it is elemental. Free from the hypnotic hysteria of the mechanical, the numbing torpor of the electronic, and the mortal decay of the biological, it rests in vapid splendor between time and space, detached from both, representing neither, and helps to devaluate the myth of progress. Of course, Lee Cherie never thought of the pyramid in terms of geometric truth. Even the mental processes that nurtured her theory hadn't carried her that far into the ozone of explanation. Academic analysis is the true outer space, frigid light years away from the solid joys of the earth. And she was too young to remember Connie Francis singing, "Is It Really Real?" When Lee Cherie looked at the pyramid, her pyramid, she simply experienced the giddy sensation of having thrust her hand into the hip pocket of destiny. She held the teaspoon in front of her eyes and moved it along the horizon lines until the distant monument appeared to be sitting in its hollow. Then she pretended to feed the pyramid to herself. She said. Needs salt. Chapter 86. Once upon a time, to borrow a phrase from the story with which Julietta imprinted Lee Cherie, a rickety, mistreated old drudge of a truck, rusty, dusty, and packed, headlamped tailgate with the few possessions and many children of a family of oaky fruit pickers, rattled to a halt across the highway from a crossroads gas station in the Walla Walla Valley. A child, about 2 years old, still in diapers, in fact wearing nothing but diapers, climbed down from the truck, which was bean shooting out its exhaust pipe drops of oil the size of the grapes of wrath. The child toddled across the blacktop. Although apparently male, it pushed into the station's women's toilet, where it remained for what seemed like an inordinately long time. Perhaps it was having trouble with the diaper pins. Meanwhile, the Okie at the wheel was smashing the gas feed impatiently, and the dirty kids in the rear were pounding on top of the cab. Finally, just as the bare feet of the toddler emerged from the restroom, the driver popped the clutch and the truck lurched away. The child stared in disbelief at the disappearing vehicle and then went pattering after it. "Wait for Bobby," he yelled. "Wait for Bobby, you sons of bitches." The scene was witnessed by one Dude Wrangle, a former rodeo contender and failed Hollywood cowboy, hence the snazzy name. Dude's original moniker was something on the order of Bernie Snooch, who had become in midlife a prosperous onion rancher. When the truck neither stopped nor turned around, Dude bought the tot a Pepsi and invited him to sit in his Cadillac convertible. The kid was suspicious, but the lure of the caddy was more than he could resist. Dude both pitied the child and admired his spirit. He also liked his red curls and the freckles that were as rosy as hypodermic wounds. So he sat with him, playing the radio for him and feeding him Hostess Twinkies until dusk. Then, convinced that the migrant family wouldn't return, Dude drove him, freckles and all, to the Crimea River onion farm. Hi, Kathleen. Sorry I'm late, but it's hard work making a young'un all by yourself, especially when the little bugger's damn near 2 years old. Here, come tell me how I done. A few years before, Dude Wrangler had swept the feet out from under a young philosophy professor at Whitman College, and she'd given up Spinoza for a satin-shirted satyr, an unpainted ranch house, and all the famous Walla Walla sweet onions she could eat. Prior to teaching at Whitman, she thought Walla Walla sweets played pool with Minnesota fats. Kathleen had a pretty face and a shiny intellect, but bum plumbing. Try as they might, they couldn't get her pregnant. She was overwhelmed by this ready-made kid that Dude thrust at her. She hastened to give him a bath, then tucked him into her own bed. She stayed awake all night watching him. Baby whimpered a little before falling asleep, but morning found him cheerful and none too eager to be reunited with the sons of bitches. This was in the Walla Walla Valley in the eastern part of Washington State, 200 miles and 200 yawns from Seattle, out where the apples were knocking their chins together and the sky was just too blue to be in good taste. In the dialect of the local Indians, Walla meant water. When the Indians first discovered, cutting through the hellish hills, a fertile valley yodeling with brooks and rivers, they doubled up and called the place Walla Walla. Water here and plenty of it. A far greater abundance of moisture than one would have expected to find in these dusty parts, or in the ethno-lingo that white folks enjoy, land of many waters. Had the valley been really wet, had it canals, swamps, and lagoons, they might have named it Walla Walla Walla, maybe even Walla 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 Walla. Had those same Indians ever hit Puget Sound in the rainy season, there would have been virtually no end to their wallying. Dude Wrangle had been born and raised in Walla Walla, which might account for the fact that as a child he developed a tiresome habit of saying everything twice. Please, can I? Please, can I? I hate stinking stewed tomatoes. P. It was an idiosyncrasy that he never outgrew, and it was his habit of repeating his lines that was as responsible as anything for his failure in the movies. No director wanted to have a posse told to head him off at the pass 2 times in succession, and it somehow spoiled the mood of a tense evening in Comanche territory when the hero said, "Sure is quiet out here tonight. Sure is quiet out here tonight." Yeah, Wrangle, it was quiet until you started babbling. Adopted by the Wrangles, Baby became accustomed to Dude's repetitions, which is probably why years later he had felt so at home in Hawaii with its Loma Loma and Mahi Mahi. Growing up on the Crimea River onion farm, the abandoned redhead learned philosophy from Kathleen and the wiles and the ways of the drugstore cowboy from Dude. Everybody around Walla Walla called him Baby, and he had no other name until he was 15, at which time he was shipped off to a fancy academy in Switzerland because Kathleen didn't want him turning out to be another Walla Walla hayseed, and Dude was upset by both the quantity and quality of the mischief he was getting into in public school. On the night before the departure for Geneva, Dude and Kathleen shared a quart of sour mash hooch with him and christened him Bernard Mickey. Being a bit hungover, the three of them arrived late at the Spokane airport the next day, and Bernard Mickey had to run to catch his flight, and he dashed toward the boarding gate. He yelled, wait for baby, you sons of bitches." He looked over his shoulder at his foster parents, laughed wildly, and threw them a kiss. They laughed and threw kisses too. "Keep your nose clean, darling," sang Kathleen, and Dude bellowed, "Do us proud, you hear? Do us proud, you hear?" Now, even though he was reared amidst redundancy, it would seem that the kind of hip guy Bernard Mickey Wrangle turned out to be wouldn't have had to be ordered to halt more than once by the Algerian jailer with a machine gun. Wouldn't it seem that way?